live at the Paste Studios right now with Louie Kemp. Louie, thanks for being here, man.
My pleasure.
Yeah, we appreciate it very much. You have written this book, Dylan and Me, 50 Years of Adventure, and you're going to share an excerpt from it today, and then we'll chat a little bit about some of the stories from your time as the producer of Rolling Thunder Review and many, many other tales of a interesting life well lived. We'll dive right into it right now?
Sure, we can do that. I'm going to read an excerpt from chapter 10 of Dylan and Me. It's that chapter is titled Summer of 75, and it goes like this. One particularly hot afternoon, after a long basketball game of one-on-one, we just sat down for our iced tea ritual. And as Bobby poured, he told me he had an idea for a tour. He wanted it to be much different from Tour 74. He was not interested in doing another tour of giant venues or going from city to city in a private jet. And I could empathize, having been along on that wild ride. Instead, he wanted to play theaters, small clubs, colleges, and unusual venues. And instead of a high-powered entourage, he wanted to assemble a kind of gypsy caravan of performers traveling in a circus-like atmosphere. He wasn't looking to make money, he said, just to have fun. This would be a tour that the fans and performers could enjoy equally. Bobby told me that he had already pitched the idea to the big New York promoters, as well as to the people at his label Columbia Records. All of them had nixed the idea. Taking advantage of your talent and fame, they told him, do a big tour, sell out as many huge halls and stadiums as you can. In other words, make a lot of money. They just didn't get what he was trying to do. And had I not been with Bobby throughout Tour 74, I might not have gotten it either. This gypsy caravan idea may have been a bit crazy and far-fetched, but it immediately appealed to me as much as it did to Bobby. It was righteous, different, and real, just like him, just like his music. When I thought about it, it wasn't the least bit surprising that Bobby was in danger of getting trapped by his own success, or that he knew it. This plan was his way of avoiding the jaws of that trap. What do you think of the idea? He asked when he finally stopped talking and took a sip of tea. Screw 'em if they can't take a joke, I said. We won't even announce where the band will play, he said. We won't even tell the other musicians. It'll be a mystery for them, too. We'll swoop into town, and before they know it, we'll be gone, like the Lone Ranger. Bobby smiled, pleased with his own ingenuity. Then he smiled even wider. Louie, will you produce the tour for me? Not too many things Bobby said surprised me at that point, but this did. Produce the tour? I never produced anything in my life other than fish. Bobby shrugged. Louis, he said calmly, you can sell fish, you can sell tickets. It was an unbelievable offer. My childhood friend, now a rock icon, wanted me to produce a full-scale tour. I knew he was serious. I also knew that his judgment tended to be impeccable and his decision-making process methodical. I thought back over the months I spent in the rocking chair on stage next to Levon Helm during Tour 74. Now I wondered if all this had been on-the-job training. Could it be that he wanted me to absorb the nuts and bolts of the music business without any pressure? Was it possible they had known all along that he might make me this offer one day? You're a successful businessman, he said, by way of reassuring me. And you can't deny that you've seen it all from the inside. If anybody can pull this thing together, it's you. Bobby's enthusiasm was infectious, and I certainly didn't want to disappoint him the way the New York promoters and his label had. Besides, I shared the same vision. I could almost see his great rock and roll carnival taking shape in the moist air of his country kitchen. I had only a vague idea of the magnitude of what I was getting myself into, but I thought about it for just 30 seconds before saying, okay, let's do it. He beamed me his most mischievous and mystical smile. I'll put together the band and the show, he said. You take care of everything else. I nodded, not exactly knowing what everything else was, but knowing I'd figure it out somehow, for Bobby and for the challenge of it. Deal, I said. As we shook hands, I couldn't tell if it was my head spinning or the ceiling fan above us. It was mid-July, and Bobby wanted to launch the tour in late October, just a few months away. I had my work cut out for me. Later, Bobby walked me to my car, still smiling encouragingly. My people will call your people, I joked. The problem was, in the business of music, I didn't have any people. So that's an excerpt from that chapter, chapter 10.
Man, well, I think it's a cool launching off point for. Definitely want to talk about this tour. Was there anything in your life up to that point? I mean, any lessons from the business world, any lessons from the fish world, or any previous experience that you had that prepped you in any way for taking on this massive task of producing a carnival that was kind of a secret that was promoted in a very unconventional way? I mean, anything that you had experienced that prepped you for it?
Well, I was an entrepreneurial businessman and successful in my own type of business, and that gave me, I think, the experience and the skills, to to organize something new, even though it was outside my realm. You still needed a lot of the same talents and disciplines and abilities, and I was able to transfer them.
Yeah, well, dude, I mean, we've got actually in this archive that we're sitting in front of, actually, Perry, at your feet right now, there's a tape of the 75 show in Lowell, Massachusetts. There's a couple of 75 tapes, actually a lot of Rolling Thunder tapes here in the archive.
Nice.
So, which is to say that I've listened to a lot of it and watched quite a bit of it. That documentary, not a documentary, the movie that Martin Scorsese made about it, and it was outstanding, dude. It's one of the more interesting tours that's ever happened. So well done.
Thank you.
Can we talk a little bit? Can we talk about that movie that Scorsese made, and maybe compare and contrast some of the way the movie presented that tour versus what actually happened? I mean, it's not a secret that there is a lot of liberty taken with the truth in that movie, which I didn't realize right off the bat until when the Sharon Stone segment happened. I thought, wait a minute, dude, I got to Google this and see what's actually happening, and then realize that a lot of it was just them having fun with the truth. Can we talk a little bit of compare and contrast how it was versus how it was presented in that project?
Well, the footage, the actual performance footage, is of course amazing, and other footage that was shot at the time is also very interesting. Bobby and Marty are both tricksters, obviously, and they decided among themselves that they would throw some landmines in there, and they put in 4 talking heads that were people who were never there, including Sharon Stone. Believe me, if Sharon Stone had been there, I would have remembered her. And the other 3 were fictitious people that they invented and threw them in there. When I first saw the first one, I said, "Who's that? I don't remember that person." And then I saw the trend, and I realized they were just putting in landmines and having fun.
Yeah, is Jim Giannopoulos? Is that one of the people who was not? In fact,
he wasn't
there?
there, right?
Yeah. There was something.
Well, he
off
claimed
about
he
that
was the tour
character.
promoter. That was me, or producer. That was me. So he was imitating me, but I didn't, not accurately.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the relationship with? So Barry Imhoff joined for real, and he was closely related to Bill Graham. Can we talk about what Barry brought to the table as somebody who had experience doing stuff like this?
Yeah.
before
So
the
when I
tour?
was on tour '74 with Bobby, Bill Graham Productions was produced that tour, and Barry and Bill were partners. So I got to know both of them quite well, and So when I agreed to do this, I had previously, and I stayed in touch with Barry. I knew that he had recently split up from Bill Graham. So when I got back to Duluth after agreeing to do this, I said, "Well, wait a second. I better call Barry and see, run this by him, get his reaction, and see if he's available for me to hire him." So I called Barry and I told him what we were up to, what Bob's idea was, and I was curious to see what his reaction would be, because he's going to be the first person in the industry that I would have spoke to about this, very unusual idea. And Barry loved it. Barry said, "That's amazing." He said, "I love it," and so I gave him some more detail, and then I said, "Are you interested in?" I'm looking to hire somebody to be the tour director, to take care of, putting a lot of the pieces together under my direction. He said, "I'd love to." So I gave him my conditions. I have authority over this, and you have to run everything by me. I control the venues, all the, who you hire, what you pay, the press, blah, 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 blah. And it's in the book. And he agreed to everything. And I hired him right on the spot. And he said, "I know all the right technical people. I'll be able to fill all that in for you. It's going to be good. You don't have to worry about that aspect." I said, "Okay." So that's what happened. And he did a great job. And he knew all the right people, sound people, lighting people, all the roadies. He brought with him a lot of people that had worked for Bill and him.
Yeah, good. We've got, like I was telling you offline, a lot of the tapes here from the Bill Graham archive, and we've got tapes right over my shoulder right now of The Last Waltz, and it's an alternate angle of The Last Waltz. It was not Martin Scorsese's film production of it, but Bill Graham set up his own camera in the back of the venue that night. So we've got this alternate look, and you had very specific involvement in that evening. Can we talk about what you contributed to it? And can you? I mean, I don't want to ask you to tell all of the stories that are in this book, because this is a really good one. But if you feel like telling that particular story about how, I'll let you say as much or as little as you want.
I'll give you a little bit of the highlighted overview of what I have in the book. I have a chapter entitled, The Last Waltz. I went to The Last Waltz with Bobby. The two of us went together, and he's the musician's musician. So all the musicians, and they're all, the top people of the day, came and, talked to him, shook his hand, and backstage, just before the show was about to begin, Bob went up to Bill Graham with me standing next to him and said, "Bill, Bobby was supposed to sing 4 songs, the last 4 songs of the show. He said, I only want you to film the last 2 of my 4 songs." That's the first Bill had heard that. And Bill went bonkers. He said, "Well, you can't do that. We had told the Warner Brothers that you would close out the show with 4 songs. That was the condition. You'll upset everything. It will be a real problem." Bob said, "That's what I want." He says, and I'm standing right next to him. He points to me. He says, "And I'm going to have Louie stand next to you and Marty and make sure that you only film the last 2 songs. And whatever Louie says, you better do." And Bill was like, unhinged, So
He's not a small guy.
No,
either.
he's not
He's
a small
big
guy.
dude.
And he's an emotional guy. And he's a guy that's used to controlling everything in his universe. It's not Bill's nature to let anybody else tell him to come into Winterland and how to do his show, So he was, just totally upset. And so I went and stood next to him and Marty. I told the camera guys to come down from their perches, they're on the towers, I said, "Come." I said, "First turn your cameras away from the stage, and then come down from your perches, and I'll tell you when you can go back up." And they all did it. And Bobby sang the first 2 songs, and then when he was ready to start the 3rd song, just before, I said, "Okay, you guys, go back up. You can film this." And they did. And he sang the 3rd song, and then he sang the fourth song, which was supposed to be the last one, Forever Young. And then when Forever Young was over, he swang totally unannounced to anybody, including the band. He swang back in to, he started singing the first song again. And everybody was taken back. And once I realized what was going on, I said to Marty, turn off the cameras. You're not supposed to shoot this song. Stop it. And Marty pretended he didn't hear me. And Bill started screaming at me. And Bill grabbed me, and I grabbed him, and we're shaking each other and screaming at each other. He's screaming obscenities at me. He said, "This is history." He says, you blah, blah, blah. You can't tell me what to do. This is my show. So Bill and I are screaming and shouting and pushing each other back and forth, but the cameras are rolling.
Yeah.
And after that song, he swung into another song. I think it was the last song, I Shall Be Released. And everybody, all the performers came on stage and sang with him. And it all got recorded. And at some point, I realized it was futile to try to stop. So that's what happened. And when Bobby came off stage, I told him what happened. He says, "It's okay, Lou. You did good." and it's all in the book,
Yeah.
That and a lot more.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that you did your job as well as you possibly could have done that job, but I'm glad that it turned out the way it did, because that's the most epic concert film of all time, I think.
It is.
And
And Bobby's
all included.
4 songs in there were amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Louie, for coming and doing this. We appreciate it very much. And we told 2 of dozens and dozens of awesome stories in this book, which are, you've lived a very interesting life and crossed paths with, Allen Ginsberg and Marlon Brando, and hung out on the beach with Dennis Hopper. And I'm missing dozens of names in there. It's really a fascinating read, and we appreciate you coming and sharing a little bit of the book from us today.
My pleasure. I'm glad that I had a chance to do that.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Louie Kemp, Dylan and Me, 50 Years of Adventure is the name of the book. It's out everywhere.
And it's available on Amazon.com. It will soon be in Barnes & Noble.
All right. Thank you, Louie.
Thank you.